Hello there, welcome back to my workshop. This is a double whammy extra special episode. It's my first donation and my first zx81 computer, as you can see. This is not an ordinary zx81 and it's got quite a few unique modifications. This was dropped over by my old school friend Stefan. He came over from Canada to visit family and they had a bit of a tidy up. And he said, I got a few bits that you might be interested in. So he dropped them over and left me with some very interesting bits. So we have this zx81 in this very unique case and what I think is a DK Tronics keyboard. A nice collection of games that will work with it on tape, a box of floppy disks and a collection of arcade buttons. His dad worked for Bell Fruit, who made fruit machines here in Nottingham. But we won't be looking at those, we'll be concentrating on the zx81. I have done a few tests, so I do know what to expect, but let's have a look what's inside. I do have a composite mod to install that was sent over from Other Lee, more from making it. Go check out his YouTube channel. He is the Spectrum legend. But really we need to get into this case and have a look at what wonders we're going to find inside. So how interesting is this? I'm pretty sure this is DK Tronics keyboard. I did find another switch in the box of switches. It's got like a faux leather look to it on the top. And it's just held in with some clips in these two corners. The keyboard is missing one of the sockets for the keyboard connector. It does have PCBs on the end, so we will be looking to replace that missing connector. We have probably the inside of a zx81 power supply, so the transformer. They wired up an LED. They've bent the socket back and plugged the power in internally. And then we've got the 5-volt regulator with a little heatsink. This is a memory expansion. We'll look at that a little bit later as well. And an issue 1 zx81. Here we see the printed circuit board for the keyboard, and that's held on with some nuts. So we'll probably have to take those off if we want to do some cleaning. So I was talking to Stefan on Messenger and I asked him about the case and various things, and this was a project with Stefan and his dad, and he said that this was a project case that came from Bell Fruit. As well as this, he had a sound expansion and a high def output, but unfortunately he couldn't find them to bring them over. And it does have a DB25 connector. It's wired up parallel to the keyboard, and he thinks that could have been for a joystick because they're wired up to work with the cursor keys. So the first stage of switching this on is just double check. So I'm going to disconnect the jack for the power. We'll switch it on and we'll test the output of the jack with the multimeter. So we've just got test clips connected up to the multimeter, DC power. I'm going to plug it into my trip switch, my RCD. It doesn't have a power switch, but I think it has a reset. So let's just turn that on. So I'm guessing that is going to be unregulated 9 volt. We're getting 13 volts, which is a little bit high, but there's no load on there. But it's outputting a voltage, so I think we can safely turn that on. Out of the way. I don't have a screen connected up, but we do have this LED. So let's just quickly turn that on and see if the LED comes on. And the LED does come on, so I'm going to turn that off. Right, let's get connected up so that we can plug it into the television. So at this time, it needs RF. I don't have the comp mod installed. It's still very, very early days. So I do have an RF lead. And we can plug that in. I have tuned the television in as close as I could get it. So let's try turning that on now. So we are very, very close. Try and get this tuned in. So yeah, I don't think we're going to get it tuned in because these have no back porch unless they've got a later ULA. So I think step one is going to be taking the board out and fitting that comp mod that we got from Lee. Hello, Future Lee here, and I'm going to talk over this section because, like a noob, I forgot to record some parts, and then the parts that I did record, I made loads of mistakes and I just wasn't happy with it. We're just removing the zx81 from that custom case. It was screws in the bottom, and then I used the nut driver on the top with my ratchet and just removed those 3 bolts. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to fit the keyboard connector that's missing. So I just clean up the old pads with some solder and flux and then solder braid. Once that's cleaned up, I install a new connector. Now this isn't an actual Spectrum connector, it's very close, and it's something that I had for another project. So I just cut it down to size and soldered that in, and it worked perfectly. So now we're going to move on to installing the comp mod. And this was sent over by Lee, Muffin making it, but the actual instructions on the GitHub were just not the best. It didn't really give you any guides to how to do the things. It just said do this and do that. So the first step was to desolder the RF modulator, the metal can, and that was just desoldering on the bottom and then 3 wires on the top. Once that's out, we need to remove the PCB from the can. And as you can see, it was in many parts. I really lost my patience and I just got it out of that metal can. Now we can put the new board in that I made up. Lee sent me just the PCB and the capacitors. I had the rest. So that's going in. We fit it in through the bottom. I attached a 5-volt video in and video out wires ready, and it goes in, and we use the ground tabs on the bottom of the PCB and we solder that to the metal can. That was quite tricky because the can was getting really, really hot and just wicking away all the heat. But eventually I do that. And then again, the instructions let me down. And like I said, I should have made a note of where those 5-volt and the video in were on the board. So I soldered the metal can back onto the board. I eventually found the points to solder the 5-volt and the video in, and we were good to go. Eventually we get to this point where the board is connected up, power is connected up, the comp mod is installed, and we connect it up to my LCD TV. We power it up and we get a very nice clean picture with that K, no interference. It looks really, really good. I spared you all of the putting it back in the case. It's only temporarily in because no doubt I'll need to take it out again. And what I've done is I've quickly reflowed the solder on the keyboard because one of the legs was broke. So let's try putting this keyboard back in. Now that we've got the new connector that I put on the circuit board. Switch on. That wasn't good. Interesting. So yeah, there's definitely something not right with the keyboard. Space. Some keys are just resetting it. So I bet there is a certain row. It looks like the next step is to do some diagnostic on the keyboard. If I press 3EDX8IKM, the machine restarts itself. And I looked at the diagram, and so what I found, this is KB2, this is KB1. KB1 goes through this resistor pack to 5 volt, And when you scan the keyboard, this is pulling the lines up to 5 volt through the resistor pack so that it's not drawing too much current. So if I was to use a test lead and just short one of those ones to one of those, it would be the same as doing a key press. And on here, they're all working okay, apart from the third one along on there. So I'm in the third one and any key, and that's locked up the system. I have to reset it. We just do another one. So if we do the top one is the first row. Just resets it. So let's just do a different key. So there we are pressing number 1. So my probe on the 5 volt line, and then the first pin, we're getting 6K. Second pin, 6K. Third pin, we're only getting 15 ohms, and the third pin is the one that's causing the reset. 6K and 6K. So the next job really is to replace this resistor pack with a 10K resistor pack, if I've got one.
Eventually.
10K. 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 Okay, the resistor pack is actually good. So we have a problem on the board.
Tomorrow.
It's the next day, and I spent some time looking at a picture of the board, and I was able to trace the signals for the second keyboard connector. And they run up here, they go underneath the ROM, and then they go underneath the ULA. So on the third pin that we're having this problem with, at no point does it go near a 5 volt line. It's surrounded by the other 3 signals. It's data signals on here. They are not shorted to any of those pins. And then it goes to here, and they're not shorted to any of the pins where it goes underneath the ULA. There is only one pin for that keyboard connector on the ULA. So it's not like it's linked to an address bus or anything. I put the resistor network back in, and what I want to know now is the ULA the problem? So I do have a socket. I'm going to try to remove the ULA without doing any more damage. And then we can check if that 5 volt short goes away when the ULA isn't in. I could snip the leg, but I would like to put it back in without doing any damage. Okay, that looks good. So we've got our 5 volt line. We've got 10K, 10K, and we have 10K on the third pin. 10K and 10K. Removing our ULA has removed the 5 volt short on the third pin of the keyboard. So I will clean this up, and then I'll give it a good inspection just to make sure that we've done no damage on the top or the bottom layers. I quickly set up my cheapo digital microscope, and rather than recording from the really low quality internal video, I just put my camera in front of it and quickly scan over the bottom and the top of the traces and the pads from the points where I just removed that socket, just to make sure that I hadn't done any more damage before we put a new socket back in. I skipped through putting the socket back in. It's just soldering, pop it in, solder the legs up on the bottom, give the chip a quick inspection, and then push it back into the socket with a very satisfying click. 6K, 15 ohm. So yeah, as soon as we've put the ULA back in, got our short to 5 volt on keyboard pin 3. Really, that's as far as I can go. at the minute until I get a replacement ULA.
One eternity later.
So I've been waiting for this parcel. It's from Other Lee, or More Fun Making It, as you may know him. I needed a working ULA so that I can carry on testing the one that I've got that has the faulty keyboard port. So he sent me this parcel and we're going to have a quick look at it. It's making a noise.
Get your grubby mitts off me, you big lummox.
I put it up to my microphone.
Welcome to what should have been an amazing
Can you hear that?
More Fun Making It. In which
Kind
I
of sounds
should have
like
been
somebody
looking at this
saying
really interesting
something.
zx81 that was sent to the wrong.
Very strange.
Ow! Careful with that knife. You got me skin. I'm here to steal all other Lee's subscribers. Subscribe to More Fun Making It, a real Lee. Don't listen to this chancer. There's no dancing cows on this channel. Look at this blue mat. You better turn
Seems
your
to be
brightness
getting
down or we
louder
can
as I'm
scream
opening
burn
the
it.
box.
Where are all the ZX Spectrums then? You can't run a YouTube channel without running YouTube channel without broken
Oh, it seems to have stopped. Maybe it was trapped consciousness in the box and it's now been dissipated. Anyway, let's see what we got. So some switches for another project. So I have his working zx81. I hope that the ULA is in a socket so we can use this to try and diagnose mine. So I've got mine set up again. Let's quickly do the check. So we have power, and then if we do any key, so new S and reset. So we still have our problem. Pop my faulty one out and take this good one. Let's check our resistance. 5 volt, 6K, 6K, and 6K. So we no longer have a short on that third pin with this replacement ULA from Lee. Okay, so that's looking promising. So now we can use this and get the other keyboard set up and see what that other keyboard is doing. And I'm going to put a cross on mine so I know which one is which. So that now has a cross. Right, this is the case. I'm just going to rest this in there. We'll plug the power back in. And then we can plug this awesome DK Tronics keyboard in. Okay, let's check that that still works. Yep. So it was just 0, didn't work. Yeah, so we'll probably have to do a bit more work on the keyboard, get some deoxit in there and clean up the keys. But they all seem to be working now. That's really good news. So the next thing that I want to look at is that memory expansion that we've got. So these are what was inside. This is an expansion bus so that it will fit in the case. Just basically it's like a right angle extension. This is a memory expansion and it's a Memotech Memopak 16K memory expansion. I was able to find the instructions for it. So we should test that works. And also we should test that this works. But before we test that this works, I really want to check there are no shorts on this connector. It looks a little bit suspect. So we'll check that is okay. And then we will plug this in and see what happens. Then I will need to find some way to test that this memory is working okay. We do have some games. We could try it by loading in a game. I think one step at a time. It'd be nice if we could verify that this is working okay before we start waiting for tapes to load. All I'm going to do is just buzz them out. One of them is actually broken. This one on the end will need soldering back on. But let's just work our way across. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be anything shorted on any adjacent lines. So we just need to solder this one back on. So this goes on the top of there like that, and that goes into the board. Okay, so I'm going to do it one step at a time. And it does. Then we can plug this in, and there's a pad on the underside, and everything's got a key. So that goes on there. That goes on there. And that pad should stop it from touching anything. So it took a little bit longer, so I'm presuming that that means that that is working. I've been doing lots of testing and messing about in the evenings in preparation for continuing the video. I was trying to load from tape. I was having all sorts of problems and eventually worked it out. So I was trying to use a 3.5mm stereo jack. And although that was okay on the ZX81 end, the ground that was being used on the tape end was this part, and the ground that was being used on the ZX81 was the next one. So I wasn't getting ground passed through. I then tried to bodge it by soldering this one together and melted all the end, and it just didn't work. So in the end, I brought mono jacks. So I got a pair of mono jacks from Amazon, and that seems to have fixed the problems. The next problem that I've been having was getting the RAM pack into the correct place. It does work, it's just like all RAM packs, it just doesn't want to stay in place. This is a PCB eraser that I use when I'm making my circuit boards on the CNC, so I can use that to just polish up those contacts. So that looks a little bit cleaner. I've also done a similar thing on the ZX81. So if we put this in now, and then make sure that it lines up correctly, and put that in. And what I found, so a temporary thing was, I was just wedging this booklet underneath, and it seemed to keep it in the right spot. Let's quickly double check that this still works okay. So the TV is on. And it's working. So as long as we have the K prompt, it has run through an internal memory test. So the 16K from that RAM pack is working. Another problem that I need to address at some point is it's getting very, very hot when it was running on this heatsink. So I wanted to just check the actual voltage that's coming in from this transformer. I really don't want to spend any more money on this because it's not something that I will be using on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just going to check either side of the regulator. So we've got 10 volts coming into the regulator and 4.9 coming out. Whatever transformer that they used inside this case, this transformer, is outputting close to 11 volts. So that's a lot of work for that regulator to do. Another job that I will do is look to replace that transformer and look at a more efficient modern switching regulator, but it could be part for another video. But what I am going to do for the rest of this video is I'm going to cut this lead off and I'm going to use my power supply rather than this transformer. Okay, so I've taken the jack and I've soldered on some new wires, and they are going to my bench power supply so we can put a nice controlled voltage in there. And I'm just going to drop that down to 8 volts. So let's give that a quick go. So now let's just check our volts. So we've got 8 volts coming in and 4.9 coming out. So that should put a lot less stress on that 7805 regulator. So now that we've got a few things out of the way, let's quickly do some testing with the tapes. So we're back with the WH Smith's tape drive, and let's do I still need to sort the 1 on the keyboard. 10, print, delete. And I have to get used to all of this screen being turned off when it does stuff. It's kind of weird. Oops. Save. Lee. So we have our program set up ready. We've got the cassette connected up. We'll start recording. Okay, let's just turn that off. Turn it back on. Load. Lee. Not seeing anything on the screen is just so weird. Okay, list. And there is our program back again, 10 print Lee. So using the mono leads, I am happy that we can now load and save programs. So we have this Sinclair zx81 fantasy games by Scion Software. And it says load swamp. So I'm just going to rewind that. So we will load swamp. New line, load. Okay, we have loaded. And it's checked its CRC passes. So we've got Perilous Swamp, a new adventure game from Scion Computers. So while this is running, I want to have a look inside. I want to feel how hot the regulator's getting. So that's a lot better than it was before. Before I could barely touch it. It's still quite hot, but I can keep my finger on it now without it really burning. And I think it got so hot that the game actually reset. Oh, I did that before. It goes blank and I thought that the thing had crashed. Okay, so we've got to get to the princess. I am the cross, there's the princess. So I want to go southeast. Your combat strength is 981. A small grey mouse is guarding 50 silver pieces. His combat points come to 0. You get the treasure for free. Your ill-gotten gains now come to 50 points. Which way now, or draw the map? I'm going to go southeast again. Too wet that way. Okay, south. Your combat strength is 981. A small grey mouse. You get the treasure for free. Your ill-gotten gains come to 100 points. I'm going to redraw the map. This screen blanking stuff is really like when you're trying to fix something. So southeast. Combat strength is 981. A horrible tough dragon is guarding a treasure chest. Its combat points come to 80. Do you wish to fight? How many combat points? 100. He won't give you his treasure. Fight. How many points? 200. You sure smashed that monster. What rotten luck. The chest exploded. And you did. And did you win? So, what rotten luck. The chest exploded and did you win? Pity about the princess. The wizard fed her to a dragon. The king is not all that pleased. Try again. You could get lucky. So, we've got as far as getting this working. But there are a few things that I need to do to make it better. One of them is fix that internal transformer and look at possibly a switching regulator. Another one is make that memory expansion permanent, or, seeing as this one has a borrowed ULA, look to getting a replacement FPGA ULA that will give a memory expansion anyway. But at this time they are like £40, and I have to say I don't see myself using this zx81 enough to warrant spending £40, so I'll think about it. The other thing to do is to make it look nicer. It could do with like maybe some paint, this top part cleaning up, and the keys addressing, because there's some of the text is missing from the keys. I don't know if I can get a sticker set for the keys, but at this time I don't think, again, I want to put time and effort into cleaning the keys up if they need new stickers on them, because it would make sense to do it all at the same time. So here we have it. I've got the zx81 working. It was quite interesting learning a computer that I've never used before. Lots of things caught me out, like loading from tape would blank the screen out. I was thinking that it had all sorts of problems, but it wasn't until I researched it that that's just how it works. And then trying to do things quickly by using the wrong audio leads, just running me around in circles. But it was, like I said, it was very interesting getting this up and working, and I can't thank Stefan and his dad enough for bringing this over and showing it me. I'm happy that I've got it working for you. And also a big shout out to Other Lee, more for making it. Go and check out his channel. He just did the most epic Spectrum repair that you've ever seen, and he sent over his working zx81 that allowed me to do the testing on this. So now that I've got this far, I can return that back to him. And like I say, look at my options and see if I can find a cheaper ULA. But I think as far as I can go with what I've got at this time, this is it, and it will require buying a few of those other parts and looking for the keyboard stickers before I could carry on. Thank you all for watching this video. This is the first zx81 that I've had, so yeah, it was very interesting for me, and I will see you on the next one. Whoa, would you look at that? The screen just went blank. It's working again. I don't know. It could be that it was getting too hot. It could be that the game was doing something. I don't know. Oh well, see you soon.